Today is October 31st. It's the 305th day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. Today is Halloween, that day every year when kids dress up in scary costumes and roam their neighborhoods door to door, collecting candy from adults who don't want their homes vandalized. At least that's what it used to be. Nowadays, everyone dresses up in costume, child and adult. I respectfully reserve judgment. Many years ago, Halloween begins as a Celtic tradition around the harvest festival Samhain, meaning summer's end. Bonfires are lit, people dress up in costumes to ward off roaming ghosts, and a small contribution of the harvest is made to the puka, Celtic goblins, in order to appease them and keep them at bay. Some years later, the tradition is Christianized to coincide with All Saints' Day, also known as All Hallows' Day, at the beginning of November, with the night before becoming All Hallows' Eve, or Halloween. Cut to Scottish and Irish immigrants who emigrate to the United States and other parts with traditions in tow, and before you know it, we're all dressing up like Batman and sexy nurses at the company Halloween party. Passing away on this day in 1926, master illusionist and escape artist, Harry Houdini. Houdini is born Erich Weiss in Budapest, Austria-Hungary in 1874. We talked about his life and career back on his birthday, so have a listen to the March 24th episode for that. We'll call that the Houdini Story Part 1. The Houdini Story Part 2 begins in late October 1926. Houdini is 52 years old, and he's spent the better part of his career wowing audiences with his magical stunts, as well as debunking spiritualists and mediums who claim to be able to communicate with the dead. On October 22nd, Harry Houdini is backstage at the Princess Theatre in Montreal ahead of his show that evening, when a McGill University student punches him repeatedly in the stomach. According to legend, Houdini is said to have claimed he can tighten his abdomen muscles so tight as to be able to withstand a blow to the gut from any man. But McGill student J. Gordon Whitehead gives no warning, and Houdini is unprepared as Whitehead pummels his midsection. Houdini performs that night, pressing through his show despite the severe pain he's in from the walloping he takes from Whitehead earlier that day. The next day, the pain is worse, and he has a fever. A doctor diagnoses him with acute appendicitis and urges immediate surgery. But Houdini has a show the next night, and canceling it is out of the question. Houdini arrives in Detroit on October 24th. He's in even worse shape and barely makes it through that night's performance at the Garrick Theatre. He does not know it at the time, but that show that night at the Garrick will be his final performance ever. After the show, he's rushed to Grace Hospital in Detroit, where his condition continues to decline. Harry Houdini dies on this day in 1926 of peritonitis, an infection of the inner wall of the abdomen, and a ruptured appendix. It's never officially determined, one way or another, whether the blows to the abdomen that Houdini receives from Whitehead in Montreal lead to the rupture of his abdominal wall and/or his appendix, or if the timing is coincidental. His appendix already inflamed, and Houdini ignores it in order to go on stage one last time. What is known is that before Houdini passes away on this day, he tells his wife, Bess, that he will try to contact her from the hereafter, if such a method and a place exist. Houdini has been exposing mediums as frauds for years now, but that doesn't mean he's 100% a skeptic. In death, Houdini intends to prove once and for all whether or not communication with the dead is possible. Houdini and Bess, who also acts as Houdini's stage assistant, agree on a message that he will send her from the other side. 1 year after Houdini passes away on this day in 1926, Bess Houdini sits in a dark room with a portrait of her late husband Harry and waits for him to send her the message. Rosabelle, answer, tell, pray answer, look, tell, answer, tell. A message using the coded language from their telepathy act with words substituting for letters. A message which translates to Rosabelle, believe. Bess sits in the dark room for an hour on this day in 1927 and receives no message from the grave. Bess Houdini sits in a dark room and holds her seance every year on this day for 9 years until the 10th anniversary of Houdini's death, when she holds a public seance on top of the Knickerbocker Hotel in Hollywood. The final Houdini seance, held on this day in 1936, is held by Bess and her companion and partner Ed Saint, and is attended by some 300 invited guests, who join Bess and Ed on the roof of the hotel in front of a portrait of Houdini, a pair of his handcuffs for him to unlock, and a spirit bell and trumpet for him to use to announce his presence in the traditional mediums of the mediums. After a few hours up on the roof, calling out to Houdini and waiting for a sign, the handcuffs remain cuffed, the noisemakers silent, with no sign or sound from the late Houdini. When the seance is over, the heavens open and rain pours down on Hollywood, which in Los Angeles could be a sign. But no. According to legend, in later years, Bess Houdini says of the seances, quote, 10 years is long enough to wait for any man. Even though Bess Houdini holds her final Houdini seance on this day in 1936, she passes the tradition on to a friend and mystery writer, Walter Gibson, who years later passes it on to Dorothy Dietrich of the Houdini Museum, who carries on the tradition of the annual Halloween seance. And other Halloween seances are held elsewhere in the country, for the most part by magicians, to both honor the master of escape and to continue to try to make contact with Harry Houdini, who passes on to the other side on this day in 1926, never to be heard from again. There's 61 days left in the year. On This Day is produced by me, Dave Schultz. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks for all the tweets and the retweets and the Twitter tweet stuff at On This Day Pod. Again, that's at On This Day POD. And all the likes and shares over there at Facebook /On This Day Podcast. You know I really do appreciate all that, but I mean it, I really do. So if you're still listening, Harry, are you there? Harry?
Hey Dave, hi.
Hey, hold on a sec, people. Harry.
Oh, just kidding.
Never mind. Talk to you tomorrow.